Airport security workers, what is the strangest item you've had to confiscate off somebody? I had a bottled snake confiscated from me when arriving in New Zealand from Vietnam. I understood completely and didn't argue with them. It only cost me about $4 anyway. The biggest surprise was receiving it in the mail 2 weeks later with a letter justifying it by saying the snake wasn't endangered. Next story. When my grandparents died, they wanted to be cremated and then have their ashes scattered into the Pacific Ocean near where they had a house. But we lived in New York. So my mom wrapped them both up in really cheap plastic cremation urns and put them in her carry-on. The airport scanned them, took us both aside into a separate room, swiped the boxes for explosives, and tried to take them. My mom had none of that, and after yelling, "You can't confiscate my parents!" we got to keep them and continue on our flight. Next story. Once, when I was traveling out of Thailand, the boarding desk had told my family to deflate our basketball because it might burst due to high pressure. We stated we would gladly deflate the ball, but we couldn't without tools. The man promptly grabbed the ball out of my hands and I started crying. I was 7 at the time. He walked to the side, grabbed a pair of scissors from the desk, and stabbed my basketball multiple times. Okay, so that's just worse than confiscating it. You're destroying it for literally no reason. I don't know the science behind it, but is it safe to put on a flight? My gut says probably not. But you don't gotta stab it in front of the kid. Next story. I don't work at an airport, but I got my barbecue sauce confiscated in St. Louis. I'd bought it in Memphis at the airport, and I forgot I had it. The chick who was working for TSA got super sassy about needing to take it because it was over 3.5 ounces or whatnot. Sad, I asked if she had to. She insisted that she did, and they were going to incinerate it. I suggested they have a post-work grill out and cook some chicken or ribs. Because she was black, I immediately realized it sounded a bit racist, and she did as well and flipped out. On top of that, I also got some random additional screening. Next story. When my parents were visiting me in Uganda, my dad accidentally brought a half-size machete through the security check. He had bought it before they went to the airport as a souvenir for my uncle. They found it in his carry-on. They asked him what he was doing with it. When he told them, they put it back in his carry-on and said, "Make sure you check it when you get to Brussels. Have a good flight." Next story. Not airport security, but I was able to get my lightsaber through security. If they had said something, I would have used the Force. The most embarrassing questionable item was when my grandpa died and we were flying home. My mom had this carved piece of art that looked maybe like a blunt weapon. They pulled it out and were asking about it. My son, who was about 5 at the time, looked at the security officer and asked him,
"Do you want to know what that is?"
The security guy said yes. My son whispered to him,
"It's a whale dong,"
then started giggling. They let us take it on the plane. It was either ivory or whale dong. To this day, not 100% sure. Next story. Sorry to be slightly off topic, but my brother-in-law last year brought a 9mm bullet in his pocket through the airport. Doesn't get confiscated. I unknowingly bring a 20-ounce tube of aloe vera through TSA and Heathrow security. Doesn't get confiscated. Oh, but I have a little stuffed animal in my carry-on. What kind of sick piece of crap are you? Next story. I take 100+ flights a year on business, and I've carried the same basic contents in my same toiletry bag for 8+ years of doing this. Never had an issue. Until the time flying back from Cancun to Atlanta. The Mexican version of the TSA confiscated my tiny fingernail clippers. The reason, she says, is the 1-inch file attached, quote, "could be a weapon." Tired and frustrated, I raised my voice to argue a little bit, and am immediately ringed by 3 armed guards. One even pointing his rifle at me. I somehow managed to work up the gall to bend the file back and forth a few times until it snapped off, handed it to her, and put the rest of the clippers back into my bag, smiling. I still carry around that fileless clipper. Next story. Last week I went to Tokyo with my girlfriend. When I was going through security, when I was heading back to Okinawa, I'm an American, but I'm working in Japan for the moment, I got stopped for having handcuffs with me. The security guards didn't speak any English, so when a flight attendant came through, she had to ask me why I would want to bring handcuffs to Japan. Needless to say, it was funny to see the reactions on the faces of the security guards when she had to translate. Well, I brought them into Tokyo because I like it when my girlfriend restrains me while banging. You know what, OP? I respect the hell out of being upfront about it. Just being like, yeah, these are what they're for. You gonna take them or what? Next story. We found a Japanese guy with a bottle of pure maple syrup taped to his inner thigh in my airport. Apparently it's hard to get in Japan and he knew it was over the size limit to carry onto a flight. Pretty damn funny in my opinion. There was also another good story. We found a pet tarantula that a young man was trying to bring home with him while on break from college. It wasn't allowed on the flight, so my friend/supervisor offered to take care of it while he was gone. He had many exotic pets over the years and knew how to take care of them. My supervisor took care of the complete stranger's tarantula and reunited it with the young man when he came back to town a few weeks later. Next story. Not an airport worker, but one time when my brothers and I were young, we went to Lebanon with my dad. While in the airport for the return flight, my brother forgot to mention that he bought a very real-looking BB pistol that has naked girls drawn all over it. Anyway, while they were x-raying our bags, the security officer opened my brother's bag, took out the gun, looked at us and said, "What's this?" I will never forget the look on my dad's face. He just looked at us and said, "I'll meet you inside the plane," and walked away. We spent 10 minutes trying to convince them to let us have it back, but it didn't work. We didn't want to be late for the flight either. Little bro was very sad that day. Next story. Once when I was around 10, my family and I were going to Disneyland, so I thought I'd bring my pencil case with me so I could do homework on the plane. Turns out there were scissors in there, so the guy just took them out and kept them. Granted, he didn't take the whole case, but I was 10, with my family and going to Disneyland. I got new ones when I came back, but still hold a grudge against that one guy. Okay. For like a file on nail clippers, I think it's a bit excessive. But like, you had actual scissors, man. It's pretty explicit that you cannot bring those on a plane. Whether that rule has any reasonable foundation is a different story, but that is the rule that is in place. You can't hold a grudge against them for that, man. Next story. Once, when I was doing random searches at the international gate at SFO, I found a chainsaw. Yup. Someone managed to get their chainsaw past the x-ray and almost onto the plane. He was surprised when I told him he couldn't take it with him. It was full of gas too, so I couldn't even do a gate check of his bag. This was shortly after 9/11. I don't think they do the random gate searches anymore. Next story. I bought a bottle of maple syrup at the duty-free when I was flying back from Canada. I had to make my connection in DC, but had to switch terminals and go back through security. TSA took the sealed bottle out of the duty-free bag and wouldn't let me pass with it. He asked me what I wanted to do with it, and I said, well, I'm not gonna freaking drink it, and they threw it away. Next story. I don't work for the TSA, but a while ago, I had a really weird, or just stupid depending on who you asked, sense of humor. Long story short, I glued a computer keyboard onto my trombone case. I just glued a QWERTY on my case. A harmless conversation starter, if you will. I'd had it for a couple of months when I decided to go visit family. I'll bring my trombone. Great idea. But when I get to security, here's how it all went down. I start seeing TSA and I slowly realize this is a bad idea. The keyboard is to my leg as I hold it, so no one can really see it. I managed to get to the x-ray without a problem and it's looking good. It's on the belt. Fits through the hole, and I'm hoping the x-ray lady sees the keyboard serves no function and there are no wires or anything running through my case. Fingers crossed. But when she looks at me and uses her radio, I know what she saw. I forgot about the mechanical lyre, the 3 or 4 bottles of slide oil and cream, and the 3 feet of metal coiled cleaning wire. So yeah, this thing looks like Bomb Central. That's when a TSA agent miraculously appeared. Like they only pulled him out for special occasions because he wasn't anywhere in the terminal when I got there. And I can see why. This dude is like 6'6" and probably 230 pounds of mostly muscle. He grabs me and brings me into that additional screening room. I feel like this is a good time to mention I'm a nerdy, overweight 16-year-old band geek. So he starts interviewing me, which is basically just going back and forth between, "Why do you have that?" "I don't know." "Is it yours?" "Yeah, but I just thought it would be funny." "Why do you have that?" All the while I'm watching TSA agents tear apart my case and what looks like mess up my trombone, but they literally can't get past the keyboard. They took everything out of the case, so all that's left is a keyboard and black cloth. They just kept swiping it with that bomb detection cloth. For like 5 minutes, I watched a fat TSA lady with the most concentrated face and 2 pairs of gloves wipe every nook and cranny on my case. Needless to say, I'm absolutely freaking out, and that's when the big dude leaves and an old gray-haired guy comes in and explains I'm not going to be able to take my object, and I'm lucky he's gonna let me fly at all. TLDR, electronics and musical instruments are on the no-fly list, but only together. Next story. Not a security worker myself, but a friend of mine was once in an awkward situation at airport security. His girlfriend lives in England, he lives in Ireland, so he only gets to see her once every 2 to 3 months for 5 days or even a week. Because of this, when they're together, they bang a lot. So much so that just before he had to go rush to the airport to fly home, they had a quick session about 2 hours before his flight. In the rush, He threw the used rubber in his pocket and headed straight for the flight. He didn't realize his mistake until he was next in line to walk through the metal/liquid detector. He quietly asked the security man to run to the bin because he had, quote, something in his pocket that he shouldn't have. The worker asked to see what it was. He embarrassingly obliged in front of everyone in the queue and the workers. TLDR, friend banged fast before rushing to a flight, threw the used rubber into his pocket, and was asked by security to show it in queue. That's risky phrasing, man. I don't know if I would tell a TSA agent I have something in my pocket I shouldn't have. I feel like I would be tackled to the ground, and yet somehow that still feels less embarrassing than what your friend went through. Next story. My wife and I were leaving for our honeymoon. One of our friends thought it would be funny to put a large bottle of lube in my carry-on. TSA guys checking bags for explosives, etc., pulls it out, tries not to smile, checks it for explosives, and puts it back in our bag. Wife was mortified, and I thought it was hilarious. Next story. Like others, I was the traveler in this case. In 2009, flew out of one airport in Texas to go to New York for a weekend and only had a backpack with a lot of pockets since I don't check bags. So everything goes through the x-ray machine. No problems getting to New York. Upon my return trip out of LaGuardia, I get pulled aside by 2 TSA agents about 3 seconds after my bag has been in the x-ray machine. At the time, I was working a job in maintenance and hadn't considered that I failed to check all of the pockets of my backpack, which I also used for work, before packing my stuff. This led to the TSA agents asking why I had a box of approximately 100 box cutter blade replacements and various screwdrivers in my bag. I was immediately sweating bullets, worried I was going to be thrown in jail, but then I remembered I had my work ID in my wallet, which stated my position. I apologized profusely and explained that I really truly had forgotten and that they could do whatever they needed with them. I could just replace them for my job. Both agents were actually super understanding, took the stuff to properly destroy it, made me do the extra pat down, and only delayed me about 10 minutes from time to entering the machine. I still felt like I'd been put on some list, but it wasn't until I landed in Texas later that I realized TSA agents on my flight out of Texas missed them entirely. Figured I got lucky, but seriously, what the hell? I thought that was the whole point of the agency. At least New York has their crap together. I'm not going to go into it, but I feel like it makes a bit of sense that New York would have their crap together with this. You know what I mean? Next story. I was a TSA supervisor when TSA was first created. I worked at a very small airport here in Southern California. We had a position called the Forward Screening Area. This was a place where basically 2 TSA agents would do an open bag search of random travelers. The 2 agents that were working the FSA on this morning were a gay man and a very vocal black woman from Alabama. The airport had a very high Jewish population that would travel back and forth to NYC. The passenger that was selected was a very strange-looking man. He was short, heavy-set, and had a creepy vibe to him. As the agents started screening a bag of his, the black lady opened a large plastic trash bag. She saw what looked like organic material and a bunch of wires. She immediately hit the emergency button and called on radio for me and the police. She was screaming and making a big scene in the ticketing area. We all ran over there to see what was happening. You could tell the man was a little stressed and sweating. When the officers and myself took a closer look, we determined that the strange device was the lower half of a woman, a rubber doll that had agitating orifices. The whole thing was covered in, secretions. Thank God for rubber gloves. We didn't end up confiscating the man's girlfriend, but you can sure bet everyone in that airport that morning knew what he was carrying with him. Next story. I was flying back to the US from Italy. I had a jar of this really delicious salt and herb mix in the outer pocket of my backpack that was confiscated. I was mad because I was really looking forward to using that salt, but hey, I guess airport staff can't be too careful, right? Anyway, after we landed in San Francisco, I reached into my jacket pocket and found the 6 firecrackers I had left in there a few nights earlier. My salt was confiscated, but the firecrackers I had forgotten in my pocket were not. Next story. When my brother and I were 12, we were flying to Minnesota to see our cousins. We both juggle, so we brought our juggling clubs, and they were confiscated because they could be used as a weapon. So they took both of us to a back security room and asked us a bunch of questions asking us if we knew how dangerous the clubs were. So, like, do they just confiscate anything over a certain weight that you can hold in one hand and swing with? Because that's the only thing I can see them being used for in terms of, like, being a weapon. And there are a lot of things that fit that description. This is a weird one. I don't quite get this. Next story. My dad was coming back from a hunting trip and accidentally brought 2 boxes of 12-gauge shotgun rounds and a box of 30 rounds through JFK. Best part is they wouldn't take them. He didn't care, he just wanted to catch his flight. But they forced him to take them and dispose of them in a safe location, aka the trunk of his car in the airport parking lot. Next story. I'm not TSA, but I did get through security/customs with a 6-inch auto knife, some 7.62 rounds, and some 5.56. I was pretty amazed. Granted, I was coming back from Stan, but still had to go through 2 security checks and US Customs. Was a last-minute pack due to doing patrols up until a few hours before the first chopper leg out. Next story. Actual TSA here. Before I get too much crap, I graduated college, top 30 school, and work with the TSA as a gateway into another agency. With all the vets coming home, it's nearly impossible to land a federal position without veterans' preference. Anyway, I digress. Confiscated ninja throwing stars and a samurai sword from a guy who swore he was a licensed ninja. Even procured a certificate of his ninja achievements. I jokingly told the guy if he was a ninja, he was doing a bad job at sneaking these items through security. My supervisors were not happy with me for that one. And guns, machine guns, knives. Had a pregnant mother with 6 small children all under 10, and each of them had switchblades in their transformer backpacks. They even gave us crap for taking them away. Was pretty funny. A lot of police officers actually forget their service weapons in their bags and blame their SOs for mistakenly packing the weapon. It's unfortunate when you come across a small amount of weed and you have to report it. The police are pretty good with cutting people breaks, though. I find that people who give you the hardest time are the ones who have something to hide. One guy was throwing a tantrum. I had to search his bag, and inside he had a nail gun. He claimed he always flies with it. The worst things you come across, mainly with flights to the Caribbean, are bags, and I mean ShopRite bags of raw, uncooked meat. Mainly chicken. Smelly, stinky chicken juice everywhere. It's all fine to go, it's just nasty because the luggage is leaking it, and I can only imagine it leaking out in the overhead bin. And then, puke. Someone actually puked in a bag while online and put it through the X-ray. I'll never forget the smell of opening the bag. The poor kid just didn't know what to do when he had to throw up and aimed for the bag. I helped him clean it up and sent him on his way. Just to clarify the duty-free issue, the reason why duty-free that has left security cannot come back through security is because anyone can get their hands on those red sealed bags and put anything in them. There are a lot of messed up people out there who would use this to their advantage. Surely the kid did not have to put it through the X-ray, right? That means he had to take the bag, throw up in it, I assume seal it up, I don't know, I'm thinking of like a Ziploc bag, and then put it back on the X-ray machine, or like the line leading to it, and just let it go through. Poor kid was probably just so panicked. Next story. Stash of adult DVDs. Sticky underwear with pubes all over it, and a silicone fake kitty that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. That, and passenger came through with his dad in the wheelchair. We all thought he was napping. Turns out he was dead. Apparently a ticket for a passenger is much cheaper than transporting a corpse in a coffin. Next story. I went to Hawaii with my family, and for some reason my mom wanted to bring a block of cheese home with her. Because there are no weight or volume limits for cheese and carry-on, she brought it in her purse. While we were going through security, the TSA agent pulled her aside and said there was something that, quote, resembled a block of explosive chemical in her carry-on, and that additional agents were on their way to inspect it. Long story short, it was the goddamn cheese. They let her keep it after thoroughly examining her bag for about half an hour. TLDR, middle-aged woman's cheese mistaken for C4. OP, a friendly piece of advice. Refrain from using the phrase, middle-aged woman's cheese. Just say block of cheese or wheel of cheese or whatever. The second you add a person and then make it possessive, it just gets weird. Or maybe that's just me. Next story. Flew out of Spain with some friends. When we got back home, we were on the train when my friend pulls out his wallet to see how much he spent. Instead, he pulls out a baggie with about a gram of acid in it. He had forgotten it was there and carried it through Heathrow security twice. Next story. Was sent by my old company to do a hardware setup in Europe. Had a few of us going over. On the way out the door, we were handed a server PSU to take with us as a box had just frazzled. Flight was delayed, so had to wait ages in the airport. Had a few beers and got really bored. Finally walked up to security just in time to hear my colleague trying to explain to the clueless guard that he was in fact carrying a flux capacitor. She let him through, convinced she had just seen her first flux capacitor. We were laughing so hard, we got checked extra carefully. Next story. A man came through the metal detector, setting it off like a tank had just rolled through. In the booth, it turns out he had wrapped his groin area in aluminum foil so, quote, the radiation wouldn't damage my junk. We took the foil. An elderly Japanese gentleman consented to letting us go through his bag. As soon as my colleague put his hands on the bag, the guy whipped out a bamboo stick and smacked my colleague's hand. We asked again if we may look through the bag, and the man bowed and said hi or something similar. A new attempt, another smack. His wife diffused the situation and handed us the stick. We kept the stick in the checkpoint and smacked the trainees with it from time to time. A German lady tried to bring about 30 full lighters in a bag onto the flight. We told her she couldn't. She grabbed the bag and tried to pole vault my 192-centimeter colleague and fell to the floor screaming police brutality. We took her lighters and airport police took her away. A blind man had a sword in his cane. We let him check in the sword and keep the cane. He said he now felt defenseless. Prince, the artist, had a jeweled switchblade that someone had recently given him that he wasn't allowed to bring on board. He gave it to my colleague. We weren't supposed to accept anything from passengers, but we let this one slide. A man came through with his young 9 to 11 daughter, and I ask, "Do you have anything electrical with you?" She answers, "My vibe." The father had the bravest poker face I've ever seen. A Russian guy gets fed up with the questions and just picks up his bags and walks to check in. We tell him we need to finish the questions, and he says, "If I want to crash airplane, I don't need weapon." He was blacklisted from American Airlines. A young male student consents to a search, and a gigantic black fake dong is found on his person. When we take it to the x-ray, he asks if he, the dong, will be okay. A woman puts her tiny dog on the x-ray conveyor. When we stop the machine and pick up the dog, she freaks out, screaming about fascism and military states until police arrived. A week later, another woman does the same with her baby. A toddler who was shorter than the guide ropes ran away from his parents to a cornered-off area filled with these section ropes. It took the combined efforts of 2 police officers who happened to be there, myself, 2 colleagues, and the parents to finally catch him. The toddler screamed with delight the whole time. A frustrated young woman strips off her shirt and bra, holding the bra up for us to see, shouting,
It's the damn wire here.
It was her belt buckle that set off the detector. A man comes through with a 5-kilo block of gold in his bag. Customs took an interest in the case. A young man in full plate armor claims he is no knight without his sword. We make him check in his sword, shield, and armor. A well-known adult content actress flirts with everyone in the checkpoint and hands out signed DVDs. Later, we realize she never went through the detector, neither did her bags. Supervisor arrives and flips a table and then takes off. Comes back with a DVD. And finally, a stoic colleague of mine sees a young woman in the line and exclaims, "That's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." After she passes through, he looks miserable. I give him a lunch break and say, "Look, if you don't go, you'll always regret it." He comes back with her number. They're still together today, years later. I couldn't make these things up if I tried. Humans are weird. So the 5-kilo block of gold, you gotta declare that, right? But also, why are you flying with that? Surely there's a better way. And OP, when you say that a big black fake dong is found on his person, you don't happen to mean in his person, right? No? Okay, just checking. Next story. Not a security worker, but my family and I were visiting my aunt in Arizona. She's a South Korean immigrant and her passion is gardening. She grew these awesome carrots that were purple and gave some to my mom to bring back home. Every time the bag went through the scanners, the agents tore my mom's stuff apart. They didn't find anything. Then they scanned again. This happened at least 4 times. My mom finally just gave the lady her purple carrots, after which she was allowed to move on. Freaking purple carrots. Next story. 17-year-old head of baggage claim for Terminal A and B at DFW Airport. Pre-9/11 and have the job because I'm the only one who speaks English. Everyone steals from the bags, is high, is illegally here, screws, and is generally not the most preferred type of employee. Skinny white teen is in charge. Bag of diamonds, adult toys, adult videos, briefcase full of Rolexes, large carry-on full of thongs, belong to a guy, by the way, VHS adult content and VCR, strap-ons, gallons of lube, gimp outfits, whips, dirty diapers, the list goes on and on and on and on. God, That was an amazing summer. Next story. After breaking a knee, I had a lot of fun TSA times while wearing a full leg brace. Usually this happened, and mind you, I'd hike up my pant leg to show the brace so they weren't surprised. TSA. You have to take that off or the metal detector will go off. Me. I can't. Broken knee. TSA. You can use this cane. Me. Broken knee. If I take the brace off, I'll just fall over. TSA. Fine, we have to hand check you then. Me. Rolls eyes. Duh. Had one where the guy was more distraught about checking me than I was. Granted, it was probably my 10th flight by that point. As he's running his hand up my leg brace, he stops, looks at me and says, "How high does this thing go?" I smile and reply, "All the way." Most of the agents would stop before feeling the top. This dude cringed and went all the way. One rather monumental occurrence at MSP, they recognized I was doing everything before being prompted. Bags going through x-ray, my pant leg is up. I motion that I'll be setting off the alarm. I walk right past TSA into the holding area, point at my bag coming through. One big guy comes over to the holding area. "You got time for us to have a trainee check you?" "Sure, I've got almost 2 hours." I go over and stand next to the mat and look at the guy who spoke to me. A little nod that I'm going to screw with the trainee. Needless to say, I was a bit of a pain not following instructions. The first 2 times the trainee made a mistake, his supervisor pointed it out and told him to start over. The 3rd time, I pointed it out and his supervisor agreed. Of course, after all that, a real TSA agent was holding my carry-on.
Anything you want to tell me about?
I was a bit surprised. I travel well. I don't have anything that's not allowed. No, I say.
Okay then, I'll need to check everything.
They start rifling through, obviously looking for something specific. If you tell me what you saw, I can tell you where it is. They looked at me like I just admitted to smuggling.
A bag with 2 bricks in it.
I busted out in a little giggle. By this time, the head guy was back over at my side. "What's going on?" Me. "I think I'm getting in trouble for my Wisconsin cheese and fudge." Him. "Yeah, that's not allowed." He rolled his eyes. I showed him the bag. He put it back in my carry-on and zipped it up. "Thanks for your time." TLDR, cheese and fudge are not allowed in your carry-on. Next story. Some years ago, I worked at a small airport, with lots of time to x-ray luggage being checked in. One day, I saw a revolver in one of the bags. Since no vital parts, such as the cylinder, had been removed, the safety rules had me call the passenger up on the speaker system. Fast forward a couple of hours. The guy who owns the bag didn't show up, so we couldn't load it onto the plane. After a while, we got him on the phone, and he was furious. He yelled, "It's a non-working gun, welded shut." We told him we just had to open the bag and take a quick look, confirming what he said. Some more angry words later and a plea from the girlfriend to just let us look, we got the okay. Now we could finally get this over with. I soon found the gun, and it was welded shut as told. This day I was working with an older, pretty cool guy. He starts laughing and pulls up a monster of a double-sided fake dong. Oh, so that's why he didn't show up. Then I saw something I've not seen before or after that day. A quarter-gallon dispenser made to be mounted on a wall and filled to the brim with lube. We closed up and got the bag on its way. Good times. Next story. I always get my bag searched, and somehow I always get away with taking stuff that I shouldn't. One time I got some chapstick confiscated, but they neglected to take my pocket knife. Another time I realized I had a Zippo full of fuel in my carry-on while I was halfway over the Atlantic. The best one was at San Jose International, though. This lady takes apart my toiletry bag and grabs my razor, staring at me like she just won a game of hide and seek. Mind you, this is a normal, modern shaving razor, chic, I think, much like you can buy at the terminal. She says she has to take it, and I just look at her asking how she expects me to shave, and I try to explain using it as a weapon would not only be nearly impossible, but also the least intimidating thing you could possibly do. She calls over her supervisor because I'm making a scene, and he stands there, looks at the razor, up to me, back to her. This razor is fine. You could always take these on flights." She turned red immediately and apologized. Funny part, she didn't even search the rest of my bag. If she did, she would have found the straight razor that was just below it. Next story. Like many here, I'm not airport security. When I was traveling back to the UK a fair few years ago, my hand luggage went through a scanner and immediately a security person stepped out at the side of me and the lady behind the counter asked,
"Did you pack this yourself?"
To which I replied, yeah, kinda. My mom might have put some things into it too. I was only 17. She got a swab and put it through the trace portal machine and it returned a negative reading. She asked me to slowly open the zip and then step back. I did as told, and after it was open, she started slowly taking things out, and when she picked up a can of Red Bull, I realized what they'd seen on the monitor. I had some earphones and some phone charger cables in the bag, as well as a can of Red Bull. On the monitor, it looked exactly like a small bomb, as the cables appeared to go to the can of Red Bull. She then said she wasn't going to let me take the can of Red Bull onto the plane, so I asked, "Can I drink it instead of throwing it away?" She didn't answer at first, but instead looked at the other security member, who just shrugged his shoulders. She nodded at me and gave me the go-ahead. So I opened the can and started drinking what they thought at first was a potential bomb. Next story. I've been waiting to tell this one for a long time. I used to be an airport screener in a city in SoCal, and about every 3 months we would hire new people. This was when it was the most fun because we could basically get them to check every bag we had an alert on. One time we had a European passenger, about a 45-year-old male, who came through, and when his bag came through the x-ray machine, I had to gasp. I saw a King Kong dong in his bag. There's nothing illegal about bringing these toys in your carry-on, but if we notice any sort of liquid or gel type substance, we have to call in for a bag check. I called over a few of my coworkers to check it out, and we all scoped the area to see which new person would be chosen to check out the bag. We decided on an old man who had just retired from the military and was by the book on everything. We'll call him Joe. So we call bag check, and I cover the outline of the fake dong with the back of my hand and point to a container, which appeared to contain a sort of liquid, possibly lubricant. When I called bag check, the person the bag belonged to started getting antsy and asked if there was a problem. I told them that there looked like there had been some type of liquid substance that we had to verify. As soon as I said that, beads of sweat started to form on his head. Joe comes over and sees my index finger pointing to the liquid bottle, but can't see the outline of the fake dong. He takes the bag over to the screening table, and the passenger gives me the "you mother fricker" look as he walks by. So now I'm trying to run the x-ray machine and watch the bag check process go at the same time. I look over and I see the passenger with his face buried in his hands, just hoping that the discovery isn't made. I look back at the x-ray machine and I hear, "Supervisor!" At that exact moment, time stopped. Joe had taken the 14-inch King Kong dong and raised it high in the air, yelling, "Supervisor, I need this checked for explosives because it has the same consistency as C4 explosives." I looked at the screening checkpoint and almost everyone's jaw was dropped. There were parents covering their kids' eyes, teenagers laughing and taking pics. It was a moment out of a comedy. Needless to say, we both had gotten written up, but it was well worth it because that's a memory I'll keep with me forever. Next story. Once, about 10 years ago, I had just graduated high school and we were going on holiday. Well, my dad had just gotten a job at the airport a year ago and he said it would be good to test them with some not-so-dangerous knives, box cutter type knives. So being the immature high schooler I was, I decided to be funny. I tried to sneak it in cleverly by getting a fake dong and putting it next to it in a small compartment in my luggage. So small that when you open it to get the knife, you'll have to take the fake dong out. So we get to the airport and the screen calls me over because they see the knife on the x-ray machine and they want to search my bag. The screener had to pull out a foot-long fake pink dong to get the knives. It was hilarious to see everyone looking at him holding it. He put it back in the bag and let me go after. I couldn't stop laughing the whole time. Next story. I don't work at an airport, but I saw some weird stuff a few years ago when I went to Switzerland. A ton of people buy Swiss Army knives and then get them taken away in security. So there's a big, clear box at the end of the line in the Zurich airport that has everything that's been confiscated. It's about 95% Swiss Army knives, which, makes a lot of sense. Then there were some wooden toy swords. They were about a foot long and clearly only a child's toy. It was a bit of a stretch, but I wasn't too surprised. My favorite, though, was what I saw next. They had confiscated inflatable toy swords. So there's this whole big box of dangerous-looking pointy things, along with 2 of these. I guess that's more because they're inflatable, right? Not because they resemble swords. Changes in air pressure and all that. It makes sense. They would probably explode, I think. At least judging by the story we read near the beginning of this. But also, come on guys, we know what the airport does. You really thought a Swiss Army knife was making it through? Just because it's Switzerland? Next story. This is my story about the idiocy that is the TSA. I was 24 years old and a sergeant in the US Army. I was on special assignment to link up with a Ranger BN in Iraq that needed a highly trained sharpshooter, not a sniper. So I was traveling from LAX to Atlanta to hop a flight with soldiers returning off mid-tour leave. I have my deployment orders and my rifle with the proper documentation. My rifle was never to leave my hands. It was in a locked case, so I took it with me to security. I put it on the X-ray belt along with my assault bag, pretty much a camo backpack, and stepped through the metal detector. As I'm waiting for my things, the X-ray lady hits a button and a red light starts flashing. I'm surrounded by TSA tactical guards and ushered into a small room in uniform with a long, flat metal table. Some D-bag looking guy walks in with bolt cutters, and when I tried to say, "Don't clip those locks," all I get out is "duh," and he clips the locks. After 25 minutes of questioning, I show him my orders for the third time before it hits him that I'm allowed to have my service rifle with me. Here comes the stupid part. As I'm escorted to my flight, I almost missed the plane. I pull my Mountain Dew out of my assault bag and take a drink. The D-bag looking TSA guy confiscates my soda because it's more than a certain amount of liquid. It was possibly the last Mountain Dew I would drink for 12 to 18 months. Next story. I worked at Dulles Airport for about 2 years. Some people had problems getting the wine through they had bought, and they were like, "We bought it here," and the TSA was like, "Nope." So I sat in the smoker's lounge and smoked a quarter pack of smokes, watching them drink a whole box of wine, like 12 bottles. Crap-faced they got on. Oh, and the TSA steals your belongings. Never, ever bring anything with you you don't want to lose. We would hear them conversing on the bus ride home about how much they got while I worked there, and they just went through your crap and took what they wanted. Wake up on that. OP, that second part really sounds like something you should report to someone. I don't know procedures on this, but that is simply not allowed. I don't know who, honestly, but someone. Next story. My girlfriend and I were flying back from China to the US this January. Somehow, Delta Airline merged with Vietnamese Airline at Japan where we had to transfer. When we get back to the States, we were one gate away passing through customs. This Vietnamese lady in front of us clearly didn't speak English. She puts her luggage through the X-ray machine on the end. All I can hear is the security guard going, "Oh my God." Then they opened her luggage, they took out a giant fermented fish, and it smells disgusting. Then I took a quick peek on what else was in that luggage. There were some strange looking fruits, noodles, etc. Then one other security guard was like, "Someone get Jeff here." I was in Peru with my family visiting Machu Picchu, and you have to drink this special type of tea with the leaves in it called coca. It is a form of cocaine, but obviously not as strong. The tea was supposed to help you acclimate to the altitude. The tour guide let us keep some of the coca leaves as a souvenir. I threw it in my backpack and forgot it was there. Turns out coca, illegal in the States. So when we were going through security as we were heading home, none of the security checkpoints noticed the leaves in my backpack. We had 2 connections in the US. I got home, started unpacking, and crapped myself. Next story. Whenever my father gets me tickets using his frequent flyer miles, I get the SSSS of death on my tickets. They pull me for an additional screening every single time. This started when I was a 14-year-old white girl traveling with her parents, like I'm a real threat. Anywho, I've had a lot of stuff confiscated from me in my life, especially since I used to travel with my toiletries and my carry-on in case my suitcase was lost, back when you could take liquids on board. Remember those days? 2 days after the liquid bomb scare, I had half of my bag taken at security, even my plastic makeup brushes because, quote, they might have liquid inside. Then a letter opener in Greece, flip-flops in LAX, entire toiletry bag and makeup case in MIA, and Madrid really wanted to take my DP knitting needles with half a sleeve attached, which made it through MIA and Munich, and I understood enough Spanish to hear them arguing about it before they begrudgingly gave them back to me. Caused me to miss my flight, which I'm still a little peeved about. While they were fighting over my plastic knitting needles, they seemed to overlook the tiny sewing scissors, bag of pens and needles, and cigarette lighters in the front pocket. And for some reason, without fail, I always get my suitcase back with that little letter letting me know my suitcase was randomly chosen for searching. One day I'm gonna fill it with hardcore bondage tools and a whip just to give them some excitement. Next story. I was traveling by air in early 2001. The TSA agent asked me to take the items out of my carry-on. I had an absolutely clear conscience and thought it was routine. When I got to a satin-trimmed bag, she asked I empty that too. Lingerie, etc. from my wedding shower, and handcuffs. I had forgotten about them until the very moment I saw them. The agent said they would mail them to me at home, but the handcuffs never arrived. Guess you could say the handcuffs were held up or locked up. The pun made a lot more sense in my head. Next story. Everything in my pockets. I'm at the body scanner at MSP and it's June. I've just finished the train ride to the airport with 140 plus pounds of luggage. To compare, I weigh 125. Some nice TSA agent agreed to help me get my lighter bags to the bag drop off and then go off to do their shift. As I go through security, I see them again, say hi, whatever. I'm now at the body scanner and it's way too hot considering it was hailing yesterday. TSA agent.
Are your pockets empty?
Tired, smart alecky me. There's nothing corporeal in my pockets. Agent made me turn my pockets out after that. Even the cargo pockets, because he thought I had some incorporeal items in them or something. Next story. Semi-related. I travel a moderate amount for work, and I am the events person that sets up and packs up our trade show booths. Often, I will finish a show and go straight to the airport. I've inadvertently gone through security dozens of times with box cutters and knives, and I won't notice until I get home and find it in my purse. They'll take my hummus, but not my knives. Seems legit. Next story. We had gone to Dubai for a medical conference, and on the flight back, I had already passed the security check, waiting for my colleague to pass through. Next thing you know, the security guard radios in, back up. 3 officers scramble to my colleague and take him. An hour later, he emerges at the waiting lounge. After the conference, all the doctors were given goodies. Scissors, surgical knives, blades, stethoscopes, sample stents, clamps, etc. As we were running late and had just come out of the conference, he had forgot to put the stainless steel blades and items in his main luggage. Sad to see thousands of dollars of medical equipment being binned. Pretty funny though. Luckily, he didn't get it too hard as he managed to show proof he was a doctor. Next story. We didn't confiscate them, but one morning at YYC, we had a Cuban fisherman come through with all of his fishing tools. This included some huge meat hooks, knife sharpeners, and other random, long, pointy pieces of metal. We let him take them back to the airline counter to check his bag. Not weird, but we did have our share of scary moments. Of course, we've had the police officer with the handgun and ammunition in a lockbox. It wasn't weird, just unexpected. Then there was a guy who had nothing but a laptop bag with no laptop and a handgun in it. He didn't understand why we called down the police because he had honestly forgotten it was in his bag. The kid with the grenade lighter, he also had a brass knuckle belt buckle. It was his first time flying, and I guess you could say it didn't start off well. My most white knuckle experience was the homebrew iPod dock. Nothing makes your heart rate go up like seeing wires coming out of a not factory drilled hole in a plastic box and hot glued in place. Of course, after the police examined it, he got mad at me, asking if I'd ever seen an iPod dock before. Then there was the time I put a cat through the x-ray, not on purpose, just by accident. That just looked weird. Nah, you cannot get upset at an agent for being scared of a box with holes and glue and wires. Come on, man. Surely you know what that looks like. If you're smart enough to make one of those things at home, you're smart enough to realize what it looks like on a scanner. Or to anyone who doesn't really know. Next story. Not TSA, but I once watched a guy directly behind me get busted with a 10-inch hunting knife. This lunatic is traveling with his wife and young child. 9/11 isn't too far distant, and he can't understand why he's in so much trouble. His wife is freaking out, his kid is scared, and he's just given TSA the business, telling them it's not a big deal, they should just give him back his knife. He's ringed by probably 12 TSA officers and is getting bundled away. Wife is freaking out, and so he starts telling her, just go to the gate. I'll meet you at the gate. It's fine. Meanwhile, TSA is trying to impress on him how deep the level of crap he's in actually is. He just doesn't get it. They're like, no, sir, that's not accurate. You're not getting on that plane. You're not making that flight. You're being arrested. You're in very serious trouble. Dude just did not understand. So surreal. TLDR, dude tries to bring a huge hunting knife through security, doesn't understand why that's unacceptable, and he's being detained. Next story. I was really late for a flight in Australia and was rushing through the security metal detectors. I put my backpack through the x-ray and to my horror, saw what looked like a box of knives show up explicitly on the screen. Turns out my brother had borrowed my backpack and for some reason decided to use it to transport small screwdrivers. Security guard goes, are you carrying any, screwdrivers tonight? I explained what must have happened, that I was late and that he was welcome to confiscate them so I could catch my plane. He said that if anything sharp came through, he needed to alert his manager. We waited for his manager for about 2 to 3 minutes, and I anxiously asked him if I could open my bag, throw the screwdrivers in the bin, and just take my bag. His response, nah, it should be okay. So they just let OP take them on the flight anyway. Look, this guard needs some more training or something. I just get the vibe with how OP wrote it out with all the that maybe this guy was a little out of his depth, or maybe just out of it in general. Anyway, that's the last story for today. What are some things you've gotten confiscated from you at the airport? Anything crazy? Anything crazier than these? Let me know. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or a night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.